Hey guys, tonight we begin with the blistering hot limestone-dusted life of a man who quite literally built the ancient world, the Egyptian pyramid builder. The pyramids of Giza are architectural marvels that have stood for full 500 years. But the real story isn't about the monuments, it's about the broken bodies that built them. You've probably seen them in movies, hauling massive blocks in perfect synchrony as they construct towering monuments. They look like respected craftsmen. They weren't. Their lives were brutal, crushing, and tragically short. Being a real Egyptian pyramid builder wasn't heroic, it was hell. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You were born into the stone-hauling lineage of Giza's pyramid builders. No royal blood, no scribal education, no merchant opportunities, just the family crew, pyramid-shaped caliuses, and the scent of limestone dust baked into your baby blanket. From the moment you can walk without tumbling down the scaffolding, you're expected to help. By age 6, you're officially your father's assistant, which is a polite Egyptian way of saying tiny unpaid labourer with zero rights and permanent dust streaks on your face. Your toys, ropes and pulleys, your playground, a construction site next to blocks hot enough to scorch your fingers. While other village children are swimming in the Nile and chasing after cattle, you're learning how not to die beneath a multi-ton limestone block. Fun games include guess how many men it takes to move this stone, hold the rope until your hands bleed, and try not to cry when the overseer yells again. Your father, the stoneworker, is a weathered muscular man whose entire vocabulary consists of grunts, shouts, and the phrase, pull harder. He's got hands like dried leather and a permanent squint etched from decades of sun exposure and watching for falling stones. He teaches you everything. How to tie knots that won't slip, how to gauge a block's weight, how to keep your mouth shut when a noble passes by. You don't ask questions. You just observe, absorb, and obey. Because asking questions results in extra hours hauling water and a week of the hardest assignments. This is your life now. Welcome to pyramid building. Hope you like sweat, dust, and a lifetime of joint pain that will arrive decades before it should. You're not just learning a trade, you're inheriting a legacy of anonymous labour that will outlast your name by thousands of years. Now take a deep breath of that limestone dust. You've got about 50 more years of this ahead, if you're lucky enough to survive that long. If you thought you'd get a few good years of childhood before the limestone came down, think again. Childhood in the pyramid builder's world is more of a distant concept than an actual phase. The moment you can lift a water jug without collapsing, you're drafted. Forget games, toys, or any concept of fun that doesn't involve ropes and pulleys. Your playroom is a dust-choked construction site filled with half-ton blocks and tired men. Your playground, the shadow of a massive stone ramp that rises like a scar against the blue Egyptian sky. One wrong step and you're getting an unscheduled lesson in gravity and human fragility. Your official job title might be apprentice, but what it really means is do everything no one else wants to do and get yelled at anyway. You're born into this life like your father before you and his father before him. Never a question of what will you be, always a certainty. You will build. Your name might be Menkau or Neferkare or Jeddah, but to everyone who matters, you're simply stoneworker's son. Your identity is carved not by choice but by birth, as inescapable as the sun that burns your back each day. The training starts before you can even understand what's happening. At age 3, you're already carrying small tools to your father. By 4, you're fetching water for the workers, your tiny arms straining against clay jugs that weigh almost as much as you do. The older men laugh when you spill, your father doesn't. Waste is unforgivable when the desert surrounds you. This isn't just education. It's initiation into a life that will consume you muscle by muscle, bone by bone. You learn to wake before the sun, to work until it sets, to sleep only when exhaustion overpowers hunger. You learn that pain is not something to avoid, but something to endure, like the heat, like the dust, like the endless weight of stone. By 5, you're helping mix mortar, limestone, sand and water crushed together into a binding paste. Your small hands are perfect for packing it into crevices where grown men's fingers can't reach. The caustic lime burns your skin, leaving white scars that will never fade. Good marks, your father calls them. Signs of a builder. You learn to tie knots before you learn to write. Not that writing would ever be an option for someone like you. The hierarchy is clear. Nobles think, scribes record, craftsmen and create. Farmers grow, and workers like you and your father. You lift, you haul, you bleed. Your fingers grow calloused from rope burns while the sons of scribes learn to hold delicate reed brushes. At 6, you're officially your father's apprentice, working 10 hours a day under the brutal Egyptian sun. The other children your age who aren't born to builders, they're still playing with wooden toys, learning to swim in the Nile's shallows, or at worst helping with small chores. But you're already calculating how many men it takes to move a 2-ton block. You're already learning which ropes will snap under pressure and which will hold. You're already understanding that your life will be shorter than most. You stoke the fires that heat the copper chisels. You carry tools from one end of the massive construction site to the other. You bring food to the workers too busy to break for meals. You sweep stone chips into piles that other children will carry away. You do all this while trying not to get crushed, burned, or knocked off the edge of a pyramid that rises higher each month, reaching toward a sky you barely have time to look at. Other kids call you Pyramid Boy when they see you in the village. Your eyes are always red from stone dust. Your skin is always scratched or scraped or sunburned. You walk differently too, already developing the stooped posture that will mark you for life. The stance of someone who spends their days looking down, calculating where to place their feet, how to distribute the weight on their back. Your father is your first taskmaster. He strikes you when you make mistakes, not out of cruelty but necessity. A mistake on the pyramid doesn't just mean wasted time, it means death. Better my hand now than a falling block later, he tells you after striking you for tying a weak knot. You learn to be grateful for these harsh lessons. They keep you alive. At night, when you finally collapse onto your reed mat in the workers' camp, your mother rubs oils into your cracked hands and feet. She was a builder's daughter who married a builder's son. She knows this life. As she massages your small, strained muscles, she whispers stories about the afterlife, where no one has to drag stones anymore, where the fields of reeds offer eternal rest. These stories are your only comfort, your only escape. But even sleep offers no relief. You dream of falling blocks and snapping ropes. You jerk awake sweating despite the cool night air, your small body already conditioned to fear the stone, and then dawn breaks and it all begins again. Another day of training, another day of labour, another day closer to becoming a full-fledged member of the pyramid building corps. By 8, you're no longer just fetching and carrying. Now you're expected to help with the actual moving of stones. Not the massive blocks, not yet, but smaller ones, mere hundreds of pounds rather than tons. They strap you into rope harnesses alongside grown men. Your feet dig into the sand as you pull. Your spine bends, your shoulders burn, and your hands bleed through the leather palm protectors. You learn the chants that help synchronize the pulling. Hebruse, Hebruse, over and over until your throat is as raw as your hands. The rhythm keeps everyone moving together. One missed beat means the stone shifts. Shifting stones crush limbs. You've seen it happen. You've heard the screams. You've watched men carried away who never return to the site. The older workers have their own form of kindness. They slip you extra rations when the overseer isn't looking. They teach you tricks for easing rope burn, for lifting without breaking your back, for finding moments of rest in the midst of labour. Stand in the shadow of the block during water breaks, an old stoneworker tells you. The limestone stays cool even in the worst heat. These men become your real family. Your father is too busy, too tired, too focused on survival to be anything but a teacher. But these workers, they ruffle your hair when you manage a difficult task. They defend you when an overseer is too harsh. They share their meagre food when your rations run short. They call you Little Builder, with a gruff affection that makes your chest swell with pride despite the exhaustion. By 10, your body no longer resembles those of other children. Your arms are ropey with lean muscle. Your hands are twice the size they should be, swollen from work and covered in calluses so thick you can hold burning embers. Your back has already begun its permanent curve. Your legs are scratched and scarred from countless falls and scrapes. Your skin is 3 shades darker than any farmer's son, baked to a deep brown by days upon days in the sun. The older you get, the more you notice the differences between your life and others. You see noble children carried through the streets in litters, their skin soft and pale, their bodies clean and unscarred. You see scribe apprentices with their palettes and brushes, their greatest warrior splotch of ink. You see the sons of merchants counting goods, not stones, their futures full of prosperity, not pain. For one brief moment during a rare day of rest, you ask your father, "Could I have been something else?" He doesn't answer immediately. He looks at his hands, gnarled, broken things that can no longer straighten fully. He looks at your hands, already showing the same signs. Then he says, "We build the only Egyptian structures that will last forever. When those scribes are forgotten, when those nobles are dust, our work will still be standing. We are the true immortals." It's the most he's ever said to you at once. It's meant to be a comfort. It doesn't work. But you nod anyway, because what else is there to do? This is your life now. This is your legacy. This is your fate, written not in hieroglyphs, but in stone and sweat and blood. By 12, you're a fully integrated member of the workforce, no longer just an apprentice. Now you're expected to haul alongside the men, to work the same hours, to meet the same quotas. The only difference is your size, and even that is changing rapidly as your body builds muscle beyond your years. You help carve the marks that guide the stonecutters. You mix mortar by the vat rather than by the bowl. You learn to use the copper chisels to smooth rough edges, though the master stonecutters still handle the precision work. You're trusted with ropes that, if broken, could kill a dozen men. You're given responsibilities that, if mishandled, could delay the great project. And it is great, that's what they tell you. That's what everyone believes. The pyramid you're helping build will house the body of the living god, the pharaoh himself. When it's complete, it will be the tallest structure in the known world. It will guide the king's soul to the heavens. It will stand for eternity. Your sweat, your blood, your broken body, all of it contributes to something divine. Or so they say. But when you collapse each night, when your stomach growls from too little food, when your muscles scream from too much work, divinity seems a distant concern. The real god in your life isn't the pharaoh, it's the stone, endless, heavy, implacable stone. You're not just born into the pyramid builder's life, you're consumed by it. It takes the child you might have been and crushes it beneath the weight of necessity. It takes your potential and narrows it to a single purpose: lift and carry, build, endure. It takes your future and locks it into the place as surely as the stones you help stack. This is your inheritance, this is your destiny, this is your life, and it's only just beginning. By now your body has forgotten what rest feels like. The life of a pyramid builder isn't measured in days or years, but in stones moved, ropes burned through, and joints worn to breaking. Your daily routine isn't just difficult. It's a systematic destruction of your body in service to eternity. Your day begins before the sun thinks about rising. The stars still pepper the sky when the horn blows, signalling all workers to their feet. There's no gentle transition into wakefulness. No moment to gather yourself. You jolt awake with the same panic every morning as though you've overslept and missed your shift. You never have. Your body wouldn't dare. You relieve yourself in the communal trench, splash your face with precious water from your daily ration, and choke down a lump of coarse bread and maybe an onion. Some days there's a thin beer that tastes of mud but gives you the illusion of energy. There's no time to savour what passes for breakfast. The second horn is already blowing. The walk to the construction site is when you feel every injury from yesterday reawaken. Your back cracks with each step. Your shoulders protest any movement. Your hands, swollen and stiff, can barely close around your water jug. But by the time you reach the base of the great ramp that leads up the pyramid's face, the pain has settled into a familiar numbness. This is your natural state now, hurt but functioning. The overseer assigns your team for the day. Sometimes you're on hauling duty, part of the human chain that drags multi-ton blocks up ramps slick with sweat and blood. Other days you're mixing mortar, a caustic paste that eats at your skin while binding stone to stone. The worst days are quarry rotation, when you're sent to the stone pits to help extract new blocks, the dust so thick you can taste it for weeks afterward. Today, it's hauling. You take your position in line, strapping into a harness that's more rope burn than actual harness. Around you, 50 other men do the same, their faces already resigned to what comes next. The limestone block before you weighs more than all of you combined. It sits on wooden rollers atop a sledge ready for its journey up. The drums begin, the chant rises. You dig your feet into the sand and lean forward into your harness, pressing your entire body weight against the rope. For a terrible moment, nothing happens. The stone sits motionless, indifferent to your struggle. Then, with a groan that seems to come from the earth itself, it shifts, just an inch, then another. The effort it takes to move this single block would be comical if it weren't so brutal. 50 men straining, their veins popping, their feet digging trenches in the hard-packed earth, just to move one piece of what will eventually be thousands. The mathematics of suffering is simple and terrible. Each man pulls with everything he has, and together it's just barely enough. As you haul, the sunrise. What started as a bearable task in the cool pre-dawn becomes torture by mid-morning. The Egyptian sun doesn't just warm the air, it turns it into a weapon. Heat radiates from above and below, trapped between the white-hot stone and the baked earth. Your body tries to cool itself, pouring sweat that immediately evaporates, leaving behind a crust of salt on your skin that cracks when you move. The ropes dig into your shoulders, reopening yesterday's wounds. Fresh blood mixes with old scabs, creating a sticky paste that actually helps prevent the rope from slipping. Veteran haulers know this, and sometimes they don't even bother with the thin leather shoulder pads. Better to bleed and get a grip than to slip and get crushed. Water comes at strictly timed intervals. A boy no older than 10, a younger version of yourself, runs along the line with clay jugs. You get 3 swallows, no more. Drinking too much slows the work. Drinking too little means heat stroke and collapse. You've seen men fall where they stand, their bodies dragged to the shade and replaced before they have even stopped twitching. By midday, language has left you. There are no more jokes, no more complaints, no more prayers. Just grunts, the slap of feet on stone, the creak of rope stretching to its limit. The world narrows to just the next step, the next pull, the next moment of not collapsing. Your mind enters a strange state, not quite conscious, not quite dreaming. Old haulers call it walking with Osiris, this half-death that lets you keep moving when your body has long since given up. The block you've been hauling finally reaches its destination by late afternoon. You've moved it perhaps 200 yards and up a 70-degree incline. The sense of accomplishment lasts exactly as long as it takes the overseer to point to the next block waiting at the base of the ramp. And so it begins again and again, until the setting sun signals the end of the shift. Walking back to camp, you take inventory of today's new injuries. A deeper rope burn across your left shoulder. A smashed toe from when the block shifted unexpectedly. A cut on your forearm from a rough edge of stone. Your body is a map of your labour, each wound a landmark of a particular block, a specific day, a unique agony. In your 20s, your body seems designed for this work, resilient, quick to heal, built of muscle and determination. By 30, the cracks begin to show. By 40, if you live that long, you'll be a walking catalogue of every stone you've ever moved. Your spine, originally straight and strong, gradually compresses and curves. The discs between your vertebrae, designed to cushion and protect, are ground down by years of strain. What starts as a slight hunch becomes a permanent stoop that makes you look perpetually subservient, eternally bowing to the weight you've carried. Your shoulders widen unnaturally, the right typically higher than the left from compensating for uneven loads. The joints there no longer move smoothly but catch and grind, bone against bone, each rotation accompanied by a crackling that can be heard by anyone standing near. When rain comes to Egypt, a rare blessing for everyone except you, the moisture makes these joints swell until you can barely lift your arms above your head. Your hands suffer the most visible transformation. Once proportional to your body, they grow grotesquely large, with knuckles that swell to twice their normal size. Your fingers, repeatedly broken and healed without proper setting, bend in direction fingers were never meant to bend. Your palms develop calluses so thick you can hold burning embers without flinching, a party trick among builders that impresses no one but visiting nobles who've never worked a day in their lives. Your knees, though hidden beneath your simple kilt, bear their own testimony to your trade. They crack with each step, the cartilage worn smooth by the decades of climbing ramps while bearing loads. Many older builders develop a peculiar gait, stepping first with the stronger leg, dragging the weaker one behind, creating an uneven rhythm that marks them as pyramid men even when they are away from the site. The skin that covers this gradually deforming frame tells its own story. Where a farmer's skin is simply tanned from working fields, yours is something else entirely. Burned then burned again by the sun, it becomes leather-like, creased deeply not by age, but by exertion. It's stained permanently with limestone dust that works its way so deeply into your pores that you appear to be made partly of stone yourself. And then there's the pain. Not the immediate sharp pain of a fresh injury, but the constant dull ache that becomes so much a part of you that you only notice it when, briefly, mysteriously, it subsides for a moment. This pain doesn't just live in your body, it becomes your body. You are pain-shaped vaguely like a man. Sleep offers little relief. No matter how you position yourself on your thin reed mat, some part of you throbs. Your dreams are filled with the sounds of the work site, the rhythmic chants, the crack of the overseer's whip, the terrible silence that follows when a rope snaps or a block shifts unexpectedly. You wake as tired as when you collapsed the night before. The physical transformations extend beyond what can be seen. Your lungs, constantly filled with limestone dust, develop a distinctive rattle. Your breathing, once easy and thoughtless, becomes laboured, each inhale a conscious effort. You cough up white phlegm every morning, adding to the growing collection of ailments that mark you as a builder. Your hearing dulls from years of working near the constant pounding of stone against stone. The higher registers go first, the sound of birds or children's laughter. What remains is the low thrum of work, voices giving orders, the creak of rope, the sliding of stone. Even in silence, these sounds echo in your head, a permanent soundtrack to your existence. Your eyesight changes too. Years of squinting against the Egyptian sun and blinking away stone dust leave you perpetually half blind in the brightest part of the day. You learn to work by feel rather than sight, your hands becoming your most reliable guides. Some older builders go completely blind but continue working, guided by the rhythm of the chants and the familiar texture of rope and stone. The taste of dust never leaves your mouth. Water, beer, bread, everything carries the flavour of limestone. Your sense of smell similarly dulls, overwhelmed by years of dust and sweat until only the strongest odours register. It's a small mercy considering the stench of hundreds of labouring men working in close proximity. But perhaps the most profound change is in how you perceive your own body. It ceases to be yours and instead becomes a tool, something to be used and maintained like the copper chisels or wooden mallets. You don't experience hunger, thirst or pain as normal sensations, but as maintenance problems to be solved before they affect your performance. You develop a strange pride in these deformities. They are the marks of your craft, as distinctive as a scribe's ink-stained fingers or a metalworker's burned arms. When older builders gather on rare rest days, they compare calluses and scars like nobles might compare jewellery. This one, an old hauler might say, pointing to a particularly impressive rope burn, was from the south face of Khufu's pyramid, granite block 4 cubits by 6, took 60 of us to move it. Your body isn't just how you experience the world, it's how you build the world. Each lost tooth, each twisted finger, each permanent ache is the price of raising stone to the sky. The pyramid grows higher and your body grows more twisted. It's a fair trade, the priests tell you, your broken body in exchange for eternity. And tomorrow you'll wake before dawn and do it all again. You don't live in a palace. You don't even live in a proper house. You exist in what generously could be called barracks, but more accurately resembles a human storage facility, rows upon rows of simple mud brick structures, hastily constructed and poorly maintained, stretching across the desert landscape like a sad, dusty village built for the forgotten. Your home is a single room shared with 6 other men. Not family, not friends, just bodies assigned to the same sleeping space by overseers who see you as interchangeable parts in the great machine of pyramid construction. The space is roughly the size of 2 burial chambers, an irony not lost on you as you lie awake at night, listening to the chorus of coughing, snoring and occasional weeping that forms the lullaby of the builder's camp. The walls are thin, uneven mud brick that does little to keep out the heat during the day or the cold at night. The roof is a patchwork of reeds and palm fronds that leaks during the rare desert rains, turning your floor into a sticky mud puddle that takes days to dry. You've learned to hang your few possessions from the ceiling beams to keep them from being ruined, dangling like strange fruit above your sleeping space. Your bed isn't a bed at all. It's a reed mat laid directly on the hard-packed earth floor. For a pillow, you use a block of wood wrapped in a scrap of linen. The linen is stained with years of sweat, dirt, and occasional blood from your split and calloused hands. You've had the same mat for 3 years. It's worn through in spots, revealing the dirt beneath, and crawling with tiny insects that feast on your flesh while you sleep, but you've stopped noticing the bites. They blend in with all your other aches and irritations. Privacy is a concept as foreign to you as the lands beyond the Great River. The communal nature of your existence means that every bodily function, every moment of weakness, every quiet sob of exhaustion is witnessed by someone. You defecate in long trenches dug at the edge of the camp, squatting alongside dozens of other men in various stages of gastrointestinal distress. The smell is abhorrent, especially in the summer heat when it wafts across the entire camp like an invisible plague. You bathe rarely, and when you do, it's in irrigation canals alongside field workers and animals. The water is brackish and silty, leaving you feeling almost as dirty as before you entered. Still, the cool liquid provides momentary relief from the relentless heat, and the layer of fine stone dust that coats your skin like a second more abrasive layer of skin. Sometimes, when the workday has been particularly brutal, you're too exhausted to make the walk to the water. On those nights, you simply collapse onto your mat, stone dust and all. Disease runs through the camp like a current through the Nile. When one man falls ill, you all do. Fevers, coughs, dysentery, they spread from mat to mat, body to body, until entire sections of the workforce are weakened or unable to work. The overseers don't care about your illness unless it affects productivity. Medicine is crude, herbal pastes, incantations to gods who seem deaf to your suffering, and the occasional intervention of a physician if you're lucky or important enough to warrant the attention. You've watched men die on their sleeping mats, their bodies shrunken and slick with fever sweat, calling out to mothers long dead or children they'll never see again. The bodies are removed promptly. Death is an inconvenience in the great work of immortalizing the pharaoh, and replaced with new workers by the next nightfall. The mat isn't even cleaned. The new worker sleeps where the dead man lay, inheriting whatever invisible sickness might linger there. Your food is handed out from central cooking pits, large clay ovens where massive amounts of sustenance are prepared with minimal concern for flavour or variety. Breakfast is a flatbread and weak beer. The bread is dense and often still doughy in the centre, having been baked too quickly to feed too many. The beer isn't for enjoyment, it's safer than water and provides calories your body desperately needs for the work ahead. The midday meal is brought to you at the work site, more bread, perhaps some onions or garlic, occasionally a slice of dried fish that tastes of salt and nothing else. You eat quickly, your hands still coated in stone dust, adding a gritty texture to every bite. You've forgotten what clean food tastes like. Everything has the faint flavour of limestone. The evening meal's the most substantial. A porridge of beans or lentils, more bread, and on good days a small portion of meat, tough and stringy from animals too old for better use. You receive more beer, stronger than the morning batch. Some men drink themselves into oblivion, seeking escape from the knowledge that tomorrow brings more of the same. Others save portions of their food, trading with workmates for small luxuries, a sweeter fruit, a bit of honey, a scrap of better cloth. The air in your dwelling is never clean. It hangs thick with the exhalations of tired men, the smoke from oil lamps, the dust from your work clothes, and the subtle rot of bodies that can never be truly clean. At night, you lie awake listening to the sounds of the camp, men coughing out the stone dust they've inhaled during the day, trying to clear lungs that will never be truly clear again. Some nights the coughing is so violent that men vomit or pass out from the effort. You've learned to sleep through it all. Your few possessions sit in a small wooden box at the head of your mat, a copper needle and thread for mending your work clothes, a small pottery jar of grease for your cracked hands and feet, a stone amulet of protection that your mother gave you when you left your village, a small knife for eating and basic tasks, perhaps a trinket or two acquired through trade or found at the worksite. That's the sum of your material existence. The worst part of the camp isn't the physical discomfort, it's the smell, not just the latrines or unwashed bodies, but the pervasive odour of despair. It's a scent you can't name but instantly recognise, part sweat, part fear, part resignation. It clings to everything, your clothes, your skin, your meagre possessions. Even on the rare occasions when you manage to bathe properly, that smell returns within hours. It's not something that can be washed away because it emanates from within, from the knowledge that this is your life now, unchanging until your body fails or the pyramid is completed. Between the barracks runs a network of narrow alleys that turn to mud channels when it rains and dust bowls when it's dry. These passages are where camp life happens after work hours. Men gather in small groups to gamble with marked stones for extra rations or trinkets. Some pray to gods that seem increasingly distant. Others simply sit, too exhausted for activity, staring vacantly at nothing. The sounds of arguments and occasional laughter bounce off the mud brick walls as men seek some semblance of normalcy in abnormal circumstances. On rare rest days, when the moon is in certain phases, or during religious festivals too important to ignore, the camp transforms slightly. Men who were too tired to speak the night before now tell stories of their villages, of women they loved, of children growing up without them. Makeshift music emerges from drums fashioned from old water jars and flutes carved from river reeds. For brief moments you remember that you are a human, not just a machine for moving stone. But these moments pass quickly, and the reality of your situation reasserts itself like a physical weight pressing down. Your world contracts to the dimensions of your barracks, your work site, and the path between them. The great cities of Egypt, the temples and palaces, might as well be in another world entirely. You will never walk their streets or marvel at their beauty. You build magnificence that you will never inhabit. The worst nights are when sandstorms come. The thin walls of your barracks offer minimal protection as sand finds its way through every crack, every seam. You wake covered in a fine layer, your eyes gritty, your throat raw. The water jars are contaminated, the food stores compromised. Everything must be cleaned, but nothing can ever be truly clean here. The sand is eternal, invasive, a constant reminder of the impermanence of all things except the stones you stack for a king you'll never meet. In winter, the desert nights grow cold, and your thin mat and shared blanket do little against the chill. Men huddle together for warmth, personal space abandoned for survival. The days remain hot with work, but the nights bring a bone-deep cold that seems to reach into your soul. Your barracks has no hearth, no proper fire, only small oil lamps that provide more smoke than heat. You sleep in your work clothes, unwashed, adding another layer of filth to your already soiled sleeping space. Vermin are your constant companions. Mice scurry along the edges of the barracks, bold enough to run across sleeping bodies in search of food scraps. Insects of all varieties inhabit every crack and corner. Scorpions sometimes find their way into shoes or clothing, leading home to painful stings that can incapacitate a worker for days. You've learned to shake out everything before use, to check your mat before lying down. It becomes automatic, this vigilance against creatures that share your miserable accommodations. The camp grows and shrinks with the phases of construction. New barracks spring up as more workers are needed. Abandoned ones collapse when sections are completed. There's no permanence here, no sense of home or community beyond the shared misery of your immediate bunkmates. Men arrive from villages across Egypt, work until they can't, and then disappear. Returned home if they're lucky, buried in unmarked graves if they're not. You've stopped learning names, it's easier that way. Your dreams, when sleep finally comes, are rarely about home anymore. Instead, you dream of stone, endless blocks stretching into infinity, needing to be cut, moved, placed. You dream of falling from great heights or being crushed beneath massive weights. You dream of dust filling your lungs until you can no longer breathe. Even in sleep, you cannot escape the pyramid. It has invaded your mind as thoroughly as the dust has invaded your body. This is not low living. This is existing, persisting, enduring. Each day bleeds into the next in an endless cycle of work, inadequate rest, and return to work. The great irony doesn't escape you. You're building an eternal home for a god-king while living in conditions barely suitable for animals. The pyramid will stand for thousands of years, a testament to the greatness of Egypt. No one will remember the men who lived and died in mud brick hovels to make it possible. No one will remember you. And so you lie on your thin mat, listening to the breathing of men just like you, staring at the crude ceiling and the possessions hanging from its beams, waiting for sleep that comes in fits and starts. Tomorrow you'll rise before the sun, eat your bread and beer, and return to the endless stones. That is your life now. Not a life at all, really. Just an existence in service to someone else's immortality. The gods created Egypt with a cruel sense of humour. They blessed it with the life-giving Nile, but surrounded this gift with a merciless desert and a sun that seems determined to cook humans alive. And you, pyramid builder, you work under this sun day after day, not in the shade of palm trees or the cool corridors of temples, but on exposed limestone platforms that reflect the heat back at you from below, like you're being roasted from both directions at once. Morning begins pleasantly enough. There's a brief, merciful period at dawn when the air feels almost cool, when you can breathe without your lungs burning, when sweat doesn't immediately pour from your body. You treasure these moments as you begin hauling stone or mixing mortar. This comfort lasts perhaps an hour, sometimes less. By mid-morning, the sun has asserted its dominance. It rises not like a gentle deity, but like a wrathful one, punishing the land and everything that walks upon it. The temperature climbs mercilessly. The sky transforms from soft blues to a harsh, whitish glare that hurts your eyes even when you don't look directly at it. This is when you learn what real thirst feels like. Water is rationed carefully. Large pottery jars are stationed around the worksite, but they're never enough. The water carriers, boys too young for heavy lifting but old enough to serve, struggle to keep pace with the workers' needs. By midday, these jars are often empty, the water inside them long since transformed into sweat that soaks your simple linen kilt and evaporates almost immediately in the dry air. Thirst becomes your constant companion, more faithful than any friend. Your tongue swells slightly, sticking to the roof of your mouth. Your lips crack and bleed. The inside of your nose feels like it's lined with dust. You learn to take tiny sips when water is available, swishing it around your mouth before swallowing to maximize the sensation of relief. Some men drink too quickly when fresh water arrives and vomit it back up, their bodies rejecting the sudden influx of liquid. Nothing is wasted, though. There are always others willing to work in the spot where someone has been sick, ignoring the puddle that will soon evaporate anyway. Dehydration does strange things to a man. You've seen workers suddenly stop staring vacantly at nothing, their minds temporarily absent. You've watched men collapse mid-task, their skin hot and dry to the touch, no longer even sweating because their bodies have nothing left to give. The lucky ones are dragged to shade and revived with precious water. The unlucky ones never wake up. Their bodies are removed before they begin to smell, and replacement workers arrive the next day. You learn to recognize the warning signs in yourself, the headaches that start as a dull throb and build to hammering agony, the dizziness that makes the horizon tilt alarmingly, the strange shivers that come despite the heat. You learn to slow down when these symptoms appear, to seek momentary shelter in the thin strips of shadow cast by partially built walls. The overseers don't like this, but they've learned that dead workers move no stone at all. The sun doesn't just dehydrate you, it burns you. Your skin, even darkened from years of outdoor labour, peels and blisters, especially on your shoulders and back. The nape of your neck, exposed constantly to the overhead sun, becomes perpetually red and tender. Your nose burns and peels cyclically, never fully healing before being damaged again. There's no ointment to soothe these burns, only the occasional application of pond oils if you're fortunate enough to have access to them. The heat plays tricks on your eyes. In the distance you see shimmering mirages of water that disappear as you approach. The stone blocks themselves seem to waver and dance in the most intense heat of the day. Distances become difficult to judge, leading to accidents when workers misjudge the gap between stones or the depth of a partially excavated area. Noon brings the worst heat, when even breathing becomes an effort. The air itself feels like it's been baked in a potter's kiln. Each inhalation sears your lungs. The stone beneath your feet grows so hot it can burn through the thin sandals most workers wear, forcing you to develop a quick-stepping gait when crossing exposed surfaces. Many go barefoot once their sandals wear out, their soles developing calluses thick enough to withstand all but the hottest stone surfaces. You don't just feel the heat, you taste it. Every breath brings in dust that coats your tongue and throat. The stone you cut releases fine particles that mix with your sweat to form a paste that dries on your skin in chalky patterns. By day's end, your teeth feel gritty when you run your tongue over them. Food takes on the flavour of dust and limestone, no matter what you're eating. But the sun's punishment isn't the only climate trial you face. When the Kamsin winds come, you discover a new dimension of misery. These hot, sand-laden winds sweep in from the desert with little warning, transforming a merely scorching day into a hellscape of flying grit and suffocating heat. The air fills with sand so fine it penetrates everything, your clothes, your eyes, your lungs. It works its way under your kilt into the cracks of your already dry skin, under your eyelids where it scratches with every blink. During the worst sandstorms, work stops entirely, not out of mercy, but because visibility drops to arm's length and the danger of accidents becomes too great. You crouch against walls or inside partially completed structures, pulling a piece of cloth over your nose and mouth if you have one, squinting your eyes nearly shut and waiting for the assault to pass. Your skin becomes raw from the constant scouring of sand particles driven by fierce winds. When you spit, it comes out as mud. These storms pass, but their effects linger. Every surface is coated with a fresh layer of sand that must be cleared before work can resume. Your lungs remain full of grit that you cough up for days afterward, speckling your spittle with black and grey particles. Your eyes stay bloodshot and irritated, producing a gummy discharge that crusts overnight. Between the scorching sun and the violent sandstorms comes another trial, the insects. As the Nile rises and falls through its annual cycle, it leaves behind pools of stagnant water that become breeding grounds for flies and mosquitoes. They descend on the work camps in buzzing clouds, biting any exposed skin, crawling into ears and nostrils as you sleep. The itching from these bites, combined with your already sun-damaged skin, creates a constant irritation that makes rest nearly impossible. During certain seasons, locusts appear in swarms so thick they temporarily block the sun, a momentary relief from the heat quickly forgotten when they begin landing on everything, including your food, your water, and your body. They crunch underfoot, their broken bodies creating slick spots on the stone surfaces that lead to falls and injuries. The flies are attracted to your sweat, to any small cut or scrape, to the corners of your eyes where moisture gathers. You stop waving them away after a while. The energy expended in the effort isn't worth the momentary relief. Instead, you develop the 1,000-yard stare of the pyramid builder, gazing forward, barely blinking, letting the insects land and depart as they will. It becomes another discomfort among many, no longer worthy of special attention. For all the day's heat, the desert night brings its own challenge. Cold. The temperature drops with shocking speed once the sun disappears. The same sand that baked you during daylight now rapidly releases its heat into the clear night sky. Your sweat-soaked garments, a source of minimal relief during the day, become cold and clammy against your skin. Many workers develop a chronic cough from this daily cycle of overheating and chilling. In winter, the night temperatures can drop low enough to form frost in the desert areas. Your thin blanket does little against this cold. You huddle with other workers for warmth, all personal space forgotten in the need for shared body heat. The coughing in the barracks grows worse, a symphony of rattling lungs and wheezing breaths that prevents proper sleep. Rain, when it comes, isn't the blessing you might imagine. The rare desert downpours turn the work sites into slippery, dangerous mud pits. Stone ramps become treacherous slopes where a single misstep means a fall that can break bones or end lives. The mud clings to everything, adding weight to already exhausting tasks. Your feet develop fungal infections from being constantly wet then dry, the skin cracking painfully between your toes. Even more dangerous are the sudden flash floods that can sweep through with little warning, following the desert wadis that remain dry most of the year. Work camps positioned in low-lying areas have been known to disappear overnight, workers and all, when a distant rainstorm sends walls of water rushing through the desert. You learn to listen for a certain distant rumbling sound and to run for higher ground when you hear it, even if the sky above you is clear. Throughout all these climate challenges, the work never truly stops. The pyramid must rise according to the schedule. The pharaoh's eternal home cannot be delayed by something as trivial as human suffering. The seasons change, bringing variations in your misery, but never ending it completely. Spring brings winds and occasional rains, summer brings blistering deadly heat. Autumn offers brief respite before winter arrives with its chilling nights and occasional bitter days, and through it all you cut stone, haul blocks, mix mortar, raise walls. Your body adapts as much as it can. Your skin darkens and thickens. Your eyes learn to squint against the constant glare. Your lungs develop a frightening capacity to function despite the dust they contain. Veterans of pyramid building can predict weather changes in their bones. The man who sleeps on the mat next to yours can tell when a sandstorm is coming 3 days in advance just from how his shattered ankle, poorly healed after being crushed by a falling stone block, begins to throb. Another worker knows when the temperature will be especially brutal by how the old burn scars on his back tighten and itch at dawn. Your own weather sense develops with time, a particular ring to distant sounds that precedes the hottest days, a certain quality to the dusk light that warns of wind. This is the cruel irony of the pyramid builder's existence. You're constructing an eternal monument meant to last through the ages, designed to withstand every assault the environment can deliver. Meanwhile, that same environment is systematically destroying you day by day, season by season. The pyramid rises while you crumble. And yet, when new workers arrive from the fertile Nile Valley, unused to desert conditions, you find yourself explaining techniques for survival, how to conserve water, where to find shade at different hours, how to breathe through cloth during sandstorms. You've become an expert in enduring what cannot be changed. It's not wisdom you ever wanted, but it's wisdom nonetheless. So you endure the sun, the sand, the wind, the insects, the cold nights and burning days. You adapt or you die. Most do a bit of both. Parts of you die under the assault of Egypt's climate, while what remains adapts to continue the work. Because the pyramid, unlike you, must last forever. You might think that in the shadow of the growing pyramid, all men would be equal in their suffering. You'd be wrong. The world of pyramid construction has its own rigid hierarchy, as precisely defined and immovable as the stone blocks you haul every day. And you, common labourer that you are, exist at the very bottom of this human pyramid, the foundation that bears all the weight while receiving none of the glory. At the top sits the pharaoh, god-king, living Horus. So distant from your daily existence, he might as well reside among the stars you glimpse at night before exhaustion claims you. You've never seen him, never will. He exists as an abstraction, a name invoked in curses and prayers alike. Yet his whim is the reason your back breaks and your skin blisters. His journey to the afterlife requires your journey through daily hell. Below him are the viziers and high priests, men who translate divine will into earthly commands. They visit the construction site occasionally, carried on ornate chairs, shielded from the sun by servants holding palm fronds. They inspect progress with critical eyes that never quite see you, looking through you as if you're as insubstantial as the dust swirling around the site. Their fine linen remains pristine white, their hands smooth and unscarred, their voices soft from never having to shout above the constant noise of construction. Then come the architects and master builders, educated men who can read and write, who understand mathematics and astronomy, who translate sacred requirements into physical specifications. They carry papyrus scrolls and measuring cords, pointing and discussing angles and alignments while standing safely away from the actual labour. They know your collective function, but not your name. To them, you are interchangeable with any other pair of hands and any other straining back. These men might acknowledge your existence with a glance if you happen to be nearby when they're inspecting a particular stone placement. That glance contains no real recognition, just an assessment of whether you're performing your function adequately. Their approval is not for you, but for the system that moves you like a piece on a Senate board. Their disapproval, however, flows downhill until it reaches you in the form of harsher demands from the overseers. The overseers. Now there's a special class of tormentor. They occupy the critical middle position in the pyramid of power, not high enough to make decisions but positioned perfectly to enforce them. Former labourers who survived long enough to be promoted, or soldiers reassigned to construction duty, or younger sons of minor officials getting their first taste of authority. Whatever their origin, they have embraced their role with religious fervour. You can spot an overseer from a distance by his posture alone, back straight despite the heat, chin lifted, hand often resting on the whip coiled at his waist. He doesn't haul stone, he doesn't mix mortar. He watches, counts, measures, and punishes. His voice becomes the soundtrack of your existence, shouting commands that echo off half-built walls. Faster, straighter, higher, more. The overseers travel in groups of 2 or 3, moving through the work site like sharks through shallow water. Workers part before them instinctively, eyes down, shoulders are hunched. To attract their attention is to invite scrutiny. Scrutiny leads to fault-finding. Fault-finding leads to punishment. Even on your best days, when your muscles somehow find reserves of strength you didn't know existed, when you exceed what should be humanly possible in this heat, they find something lacking. That block isn't aligned properly. You're taking too long between loads. Your team is falling behind the others. The mortar mix is too thin. Their criticism comes with consequences. Minor infractions might earn you extra hours after others return to camp, working until the last light fades and you can barely see the path back to your sleeping mat. More serious offences bring the whip, quick practice strokes that cut through your sweat-soaked kilt and into the already sun-damaged skin beneath. They know exactly how hard to strike, enough to leave marks that will remind you for days, not enough to render you incapable of work tomorrow. The truly skilled overseers don't even need to use the whip often. Their reputation does the work for them. They cultivate an aura of unpredictable menace that keeps you straining at maximum effort even when they're inspecting another section. Because you never know when they'll appear behind you, voice slicing through the air like the whip they may or may not use today. Some overseers have specialties. There's the one who measures progress obsessively, counting blocks moved per hour, and comparing today's numbers to yesterday's with relentless precision. There's another who focuses on technique, watching how you position your body when lifting, how you distribute weight in your team, correcting with sharp jabs from a wooden rod. There's the one who seems to derive personal pleasure from finding workers taking unauthorized underwater breaks, appearing like a vengeful spirit precisely when your parched throat demands relief. Then there are the crew chiefs, occupying the narrow space between you and the overseers. They were once exactly what you are now, common labourers who demonstrated either exceptional strength unusual intelligence, or rare leadership qualities. Or perhaps they simply survived longer than others and knew whose sandals to lick. Whatever elevated them, they now lead teams of 20 to 40 men, responsible for specific tasks or sections of the monument. The best crew chiefs function as buffers, absorbing some of the overseer's wrath while translating impossible demands into merely brutal ones. They know exactly how hard they can push before men break. They recognize the difference between a worker faking exhaustion and one about to collapse from genuine heat sickness. They distribute the hardest tasks among the strongest backs. When one of their crew falls, they quickly redistribute the work without missing a beat. The worst crew chiefs are petty tyrants, drunk on their minimal power, currying favour with overseers by driving their teams beyond human limits. They assign the heaviest loads to men they dislike. They report minor infractions that could have been overlooked. They claim credit for any success while ensuring blame for failures falls on individual workers. Men under these chiefs tend to have shorter working lives. Your current crew chief is somewhere in the middle, not actively malicious but utterly focused on meeting quotas. He has a family in a nearby village, receives slightly better rations, and has actually learned your name. Sometimes, when the overseers are far away, he allows brief rest periods if the day's targets are being met. Other times, when deadlines loom, he transforms into just another voice shouting for more speed, more effort, more of whatever your body has left to give. Beneath the crew chiefs are the skilled craftsmen, the stonemasons who shape the blocks with copper chisels and obsidian blades, the rope makers whose products must never break no matter the load, the surveyors who ensure every level is true. They occupy a strange middle position. Their hands are as calloused as yours, but their knowledge grants them privileges you'll never know. Extra water rations, occasional rest days, sleeping quarters slightly less crowded than yours. You've watched these craftsmen work, marvelling at their precision even in brutal conditions. The way a mason can tap a chisel just so, following the natural grain of the stone to split it cleanly along an invisible line. The way a surveyor can use simple tools and complex knowledge to ensure a surface is perfectly level across distances that make your mind spin. They rarely speak to common labourers like you. Their skills make them valuable, your muscle makes you replaceable. At your level, the base of this human pyramid, two distinctions still exist. There are the haulers, the strongest men who move stone blocks from quarry to construction site using brute force multiplied by simple machines. There are the mortar mixers who combine lime, sand, clay and water in precise ratios to create the binding agent that will hold sections of the monument together. There are the water carriers, often younger boys not yet strong enough for heavier tasks, who run back and forth with clay pots that are never large enough to slake the site's constant thirst. Within these groups, informal hierarchies emerge. The strongest haulers get the most respect and slightly better positions in the pulling teams. The most experienced mortar mechas can produce perfect consistency with instinctive skill, earning them marginally easier schedules. Even among water carriers, those who can deliver more trips per hour might receive an extra crust of bread at evening meal. You started as a water carrier when you were 7, graduated to mortar mixing by 10, and joined the hauling teams at 14, when your shoulders broadened and your chest deepened. Now, at 22, you're considered a veteran, not of high enough status to become a crew chief, not skilled enough to join the craftsmen, but experienced enough to be positioned at critical points in hauling chains where your strength and dependability matter most. This position comes with no official recognition, no extra rations, no relief from the sun's assault. It simply means your death by exhaustion might come slightly later than it will for the newest workers who arrive from river villages last moon. It means overseers are marginally less likely to select you for demonstration punishments when productivity drops. Small mercies in an unmerciful system. The priests form another branch of this hierarchy, moving through the construction site with authority that stems from different sources than the overseers. They perform rituals at each major stage of construction, offering sacrifices to ensure divine favour. They consult astronomical charts to confirm alignments. They recite sacred texts when foundation stones are laid or when capstones top completed sections. Unlike the overseers, the priests don't concern themselves with your individual performance. Their focus remains on cosmic harmony, on ensuring the monument fulfills its sacred purpose. But their presence affects your daily existence nonetheless. Work stops for their ceremonies, offering brief respite from labour but extending the day's schedule. They sometimes declare certain days auspicious or inauspicious for particular tasks, rearranging work patterns in ways that often make your job harder. Some priests, particularly those dedicated to healing deities, occasionally move through the workers' camp, offering prayers and simple treatments for injuries. These visits are rare enough to seem miraculous when they occur. A salve applied to rope-burned hands, a splint for a broken finger that might otherwise end your usefulness permanently, a blessed amulet to ward off the fevers that sweep through the crowded barracks periodically. The military provides both protection and intimidation, with soldiers stationed around the perimeter of the construction site and workers' camp. Their official purpose is defense against desert raiders or civil unrest. Their practical function is ensuring no one leaves without authorization. They don't directly participate in the construction hierarchy, but their presence forms an outer boundary to your world, a living wall reinforcing the message that you are here to serve a purpose greater than yourself with no option of escape. For all this elaborate social stratification, the most brutal aspect is its permanence. There is virtually no upward mobility in your future. The best you can hope for is survival until the current monument is completed, followed by assignment to a slightly less demanding project. Perhaps a noble's tomb rather than the pharaoh's pyramid. Or, if your body gives out but your mind remains sharp, you might become one of the counters who inventory stone blocks and track supplies. Promotion to crew chief happens rarely, and depends as much on political connections as on merit. The specialized knowledge required to become a craftsman is passed from father to son or master to chosen apprentice, pathways closed to you since birth. The architects and administrators come from elite families, educated from childhood in skills you'll never access. Your position was determined before you took your first breath. Your father hauled stone for the previous pharaoh's monuments. His father did the same for the ruler before that. Your son, if you live long enough to have one and if he survives childhood, will pull ropes and lever blocks for whoever sits on the throne when his muscles become useful to the state. This knowledge weighs heavier than any stone block you've ever moved. The hierarchical structure above you, from crew chiefs to overseers to architects to viziers to the living god himself, exists to ensure the monument rises while you, eventually, fall. You're not building a pathway to the stars for yourself. You're building it for those who would never deign to learn your name, who see the scars on your back as the necessary cost of eternal glory that you'll never share. In the shadow of the monuments that would last millennia, your tools are almost laughably primitive. The irony doesn't escape you. These wonders of precision were built with implements so basic they'd make a modern craftsman weep. Your hands, already more tool than flesh, grasp the same copper chisel your father once held. It's been resharpened so many times it's half its original length, the metal worn thin from thousands of strikes against unyielding stone. The copper chisel, your constant companion. When new, it gleams with possibility. Within hours, it dulls against limestone and granite. By midday, you're working with what amounts to a copper-covered stick, the edge folded and useless. You'll spend your evening hours hammering it back into shape, reheating it in small fires to soften the metal, only to watch it fail again tomorrow. The pharaoh's mines provide copper, but never enough. Each chisel is precious, passed down like an heirloom. Each dent and scratch a history of your family's suffering. Your hammer is no better. A dense dolerite stone roughly shaped and bound to a wooden handle with leather straps that constantly need replacing. The stone is harder than copper, harder than most things in Egypt, which makes it effective but unwieldy. After hours of strickling, your elbow feels disconnected, your shoulder burns, and your wrist makes clicking sounds that can't possibly be normal. When the handle breaks, and it always breaks, you'll spend your rest time fashioning another from whatever scraps of wood you can scavenge. The ropes, though, the ropes are perhaps your greatest enemy. Made from twisted papyrus or palm fibre, they cut into your flesh like burning wire. They're everywhere, pulling blocks, securing loads, binding tools. They fray constantly, sending splinters into your palms. When they snap under tension, they whip back with enough force to blind or kill. You've seen it happen. The man 3 spaces down from you last month, one moment hauling, the next on the ground with half his face torn away. The overseer gave his family an extra ration of beer that night. Such generosity. Every morning you coat your hands with a mixture of animal fat and sand. It doesn't prevent the blisters, but it might keep the rope from taking a full layer of skin. Your palms are no longer recognizable as human. They are calloused plates, cracked and bleeding at the creases, more like tortoise shell than flesh. You can't fully straighten your fingers anymore. They've frozen into a permanent curve, shaped to the tools they serve rather than the other way around. The wooden levers you use to pry stones into place are no more than tree trunks stripped of branches. They splinter, they crack, they give way at the worst possible moments. You've learned to listen for the subtle creak that precedes catastrophic failure. That sound has saved your life more than once. When a lever breaks under load, someone usually dies. The lucky ones are just maimed. Dragging sledges make up much of your day. Massive wooden platforms designed to hold multi-ton blocks, pulled by hundreds of men over rollers made from palm trunks. The mathematics are simple and brutal. The more men pull, the faster it moves. If men fall, others take their place. The sledge doesn't care who pulls it. Neither do the overseers. The wooden rollers must be constantly moved from back to front as the sledge advances, an endless cycle requiring perfect timing. Miss your moment, and the entire procession grinds to a halt. The punishment for such delays is swift and painful. The inclined ramps you help build and then destroy are temporary wonders in themselves. Massive earthworks that spiral around the growing pyramid or approach it straight on, depending on the current master builder's preference. You spend months constructing a perfect ramp, hauling countless baskets of rubble and wool, only to dismantle it stone by stone as the pyramid nears completion. It's a particular kind of suffering to destroy your own work to erase the evidence of your most impressive engineering. Your measuring tools have an almost religious significance. The cubit rod, made from carefully shaped granite, represents the forearm of the pharaoh himself, the perfect unit of measurement. When architects arrive with their measuring lines and plumb bobs, silence falls across the worksite. These are moments of truth, when your collective work is judged. A deviation of even a finger's width can result in beatings, ration reductions, or worse. You've seen master builders executed for failures of alignment. The precision demanded seems impossible given your crude tools, yet somehow, stone by stone, the monument rises with supernatural accuracy. Water is both tool and treasure. You use it to soften ground, to cool tools, to wet ropes for greater strength. But mostly you use it to move stone. The ingenious systems of channels and locks that allow massive blocks to float on barges from distant quarries to the worksite are perhaps your civilization's most impressive achievement, far more practical than the pyramids themselves. You've helped dig these channels, lined them with clay, maintained the critical water levels even during drought. Without water, there are no pyramids. Without the Nile, there is no Egypt. The quarrying tools are the most brutal of all. Massive stone balls used to pound away at bedrock, separating blocks along carefully plotted lines. The noise is deafening, the dust choking, the repetitive motion destructive to joints and muscle. Men who work the quarries rarely last more than a few years before their bodies or lungs fail. You did your time there as a younger man. You still wake sometimes, gasping, convinced your lungs are filled with stone dust. Wooden mallets and wedges are used for the more delicate work of splitting stones along natural seams. You've developed an almost mystical ability to read stone, to see its hidden weaknesses, to know where it will break before applying pressure. This skill has kept you alive while others perished. Stone speaks to those who listen long enough. You've been listening your entire life, your ear pressed against cold limestone, waiting for the subtle reply that says, "Strike here, not there." The bronze saws appear rarely, reserved for the finest finishing work on granite and other hard stones. Pulled back and forth by teams of men for weeks to cut a single block, these precious tools are guarded more carefully than human lives. They require constant lubrication with a slurry of water and quartz sand, the abrasive doing the cutting more than the soft metal of the saw itself. The work is mind-numbingly monotonous, pull, push, add sand, pull, push for hours without stopping. The sound haunts your dreams, a rhythmic scraping that never resolves. For moving the largest blocks into final position, you rely on the lever and fulcrum, simple physics that nonetheless requires perfect execution. Teams of men coordinate to slowly, agonizingly nudge massive stones mere fingers' widths at a time. A single mistake can undo hours of work or crush limbs beyond repair. You communicate in a complex language of grunts and calls. A percussion of human voices timing each push and pull is the closest thing to music in your daily life. The most remarkable tools, though, are the simplest: baskets. Endless, countless baskets woven from reeds, used to carry everything from sand to water, to food to human waste. They're made by the women and children of your camp, replaced constantly as they wear out. Your world moves in baskets, endless streams of humanity carrying endless streams of material, up and down ramps, across the site from sunrise to sunset. If the pyramid is a monument to anything, it should be to the humble basket, not the pharaoh. You've watched the evolution of tools across your lifetime. Your grandfather spoke of using stone hammers exclusively, while you now have access to copper. The techniques improve incrementally, generation by generation. Small innovations, a slightly better rope weave, more efficient sledge design, save lives and time, though they're rarely recognized or rewarded. The workers themselves are the greatest innovators, though the architects and priests take credit for every advancement. What amazes visitors to the site isn't just the scale of the work, but the precision. Blocks weighing tons fit together with joints so tight a blade of grass can't pass between them. This isn't the result of magical powers or alien intervention as later civilizations might speculate. It's the accumulated skill and suffering of thousands of workers using rudimentary tools with extraordinary patience. Each perfect seam represents countless broken bodies and worn-out tools. At night, you maintain what tools you can, sharpening, binding, repairing. This work is unpaid but essential. Your children learn by watching, small hands mimicking your movements, preparing for their inheritance of stone and struggle. They'll use these same techniques, these same fundamental tools, unchanged for generations. The copper may come from different mines, the wood from different trees, but the principles remain as unchanging as the stars. The technology that truly built the pyramids wasn't mechanical, it was social. The ability to organize thousands of workers in coordinated effort to feed them, house them, motivate them through fear or faith, or some combination of both. You're not just using tools, you're a tool, a component in a vast human machine designed to manifest a god king's obsession with immortality. On rare occasions, you've glimpsed the specialized tools of the master craftsmen who carve hieroglyphs and statues. Delicate copper implements with carved wooden handles, pristine and precise. You're not allowed to touch these or even approach them closely. They exist in another world, one where craftsmen work in shade, drink clean water, and sleep without the bone-deep ache that defines your existence. Sometimes in moments of exhaustion or sunsickness, you hallucinate tools that don't exist. Devices that could lift stones effortlessly, cut through granite like clay, move mountains with the touch. You keep these thoughts private. Such talk marks one as mad or worse, seditious. The tools you have are the tools ordained by the gods. To imagine better ones is to question divine order. Years of working with the same implements has left its mark. Your right arm is noticeably larger than your left. Your hands are permanently malformed. Your back bent in specific ways from specific repeated actions. Your body has become a specialized tool in itself, shaped by the work like the stones you help place. In a sense, you're as much a part of the pyramid as any limestone block. Your life force, your health, your years converted into height and mass and geometric perfection. You know these tools as intimately as you know your own children, their weight, their balance, their breaking points. This knowledge doesn't make the work easier, but it might keep you alive another day. And in the brutal calculus of pyramid building, surviving until tomorrow is the only technology that truly matters. You've spent another day dragging multi-ton blocks across baking sand, your shoulders raw from rope burns, your lungs coated with limestone dust. Your back feels like it's been trampled by oxen. Your hands are bleeding again. And what do you receive for this sacrifice of flesh and bone? Not gold, not silver, not even copper. You get bread, onions, and beer. Welcome to the ancient Egyptian compensation package. Let's be clear about one thing. You're not a slave. The pharaoh's scribes are very particular about this distinction. You're a conscripted laborer performing your civic and religious duty to the living God who rules the two lands. This technicality matters little when you're hauling stone in the midday sun, but it does affect how you're compensated. Slaves receive only what keeps them alive. You, as a free Egyptian, receive what keeps you alive plus the smallest possible amount extra to acknowledge your theoretical freedom. Your primary payment comes in food rations. Each day you receive 3 simple meals. The morning meal, a flatbread so coarse it scratches your gums, accompanied by a thin soup of whatever vegetables were deemed too poor for the noble tables. Midday, more bread, perhaps an onion, maybe a handful of dates if the harvest was good. Evening, bread again, possibly with a small portion of salted fish that's been sitting in the desert heat all day. You don't complain. Complaining a mare means less tomorrow. The beer, though, that's the real currency of pyramid building. You receive approximately 4 to 5 pints daily. Cloudy, nutritious brew that's more like liquid bread than modern alcohol. It's lower in alcohol than what you might imagine, but after a day of brutal labour, it delivers blessed relief. The beer serves multiple purposes. It provides you calories, It kills some of the bacteria in the questionable water supplies, and most importantly, it dulls the pain just enough to let you sleep despite your screaming muscles. Without beer, the pyramids would never have risen. Without beer, the workforce would have collapsed or revolted long ago. On special occasions, the pharaoh's birthday, religious festivals, or the completion of a significant construction milestone, extra rations appear, a bit of honey, a piece of meat that isn't mostly gristle, perhaps dates soaked in wine. These momentary indulgences are carefully calculated to maintain morale while consuming minimal resources. You've seen grown men weep over an extra handful of almonds after months of plain bread. Then there's the housing benefit. You're provided with a space in the workers' village, a mud brick structure shared with 6 to 8 other labourers. The roof leaks during the rare rains. Scorpions and snakes are your unwelcome roommates. Your sleeping mat, which you weave yourself from reeds, lies directly on the packed earth floor. In summer, the interior becomes an oven. In winter, the desert nights chill your bones. But it's shelter, and you don't pay rent. This, you're frequently reminded, is the pharaoh's generosity. Medical care exists, after a fashion. The site has physicians who know how to set broken bones, stitch wounds, and apply poultices to infections. Their success rate is questionable. Their methods are brutal. But when your arm is crushed beneath a shifting block, even primitive medicine is better than nothing. Of course, if you're too severely injured to return to work eventually, the medical attention tapers off quickly. The physician's primary job isn't healing you, it's getting you back to hauling stone as rapidly as possible. There are no sick days. You work unless you're physically incapable of standing. Fevers, digestive ailments, injuries that don't involve visible bones protruding through skin, none of these excuse you from your duties. If you collapse on site, you might get the remainder of the day to recover. Might. The pharaoh's timetable doesn't account for human frailty. The stars must align with the pyramid corners on schedule, regardless of your personal suffering. Death benefits are surprisingly formalized. If you die on the job, a common enough occurrence that there's an established protocol, your family receives a burial allotment. Not a grand tomb with painted walls and golden treasures, of course. Just enough linen for wrapping, a simple wooden coffin if you are especially valued, and a plot in the workers' cemetery. Your name might be recorded in the project logs, one tally mark among hundreds. The pharaoh's administrators pride themselves on this accounting. Your family also receives approximately 1 month of continued rations after your death. This is presented as extraordinary generosity, the divine mercy of the God King flowing down to the lowest levels of society. In reality, it's barely enough time for your wife to find alternative arrangements before hunger sets in. Many widows of pyramid builders end up as servants in noble houses, or remarry with shocking speed, not from lack of grief, but from brutal necessity. The most peculiar benefit of your position is religious. You're repeatedly told that your labour contributes to the cosmic order, Ma'at, that keeps the universe functioning. By building the pharaoh's eternal home, you secure Egypt's prosperity and your own place in the afterlife. The priests assure you that the God King will remember your contribution when you face judgment beyond death. Whether this provides actual comfort after watching your friend get crushed under a 2-ton limestone block is questionable, but it's presented as compensation nonetheless. There's also the matter of skill development. As you labour year after year, you gain knowledge of stone, of weight, of balance. Some workers eventually become specialised, rope masters, surveyor's assistants, cutting specialists. These positions don't exempt you from physical labour, but they might reduce the most backbreaking aspects. They might also come with marginal improvements in rations or living conditions. This advancement, slow and minimal as it is, represents the closest thing to a career path available to you. Comparing your compensation to others in Egyptian society is an exercise in understanding your place in the cosmic hierarchy. The scribes who track your work enjoy shade, clean water, and homes with actual furniture. The soldiers who guard the site eat meat regularly and receive land grants for their service. Priests consume the offerings made to the gods, living on the finest foods in Egypt. Nobles and officials dine on delicacies, drink wine instead of beer, wear linen so fine it's nearly transparent, and sleep on raised beds cushioned with soft materials. The pharaoh, of course, is adorned in gold and fed by servants who taste each morsel before it touches his divine lips. And you? You get bread, onions, and beer. Occasionally, very occasionally, a dried fig might find its way into your hand. Such is the compensation deemed appropriate for building the most precisely constructed monuments in human history. There are unofficial benefits too. Small economies that develop among the workers themselves. You might trade your skills at basket weaving for extra food. You might gamble with marked stones during rare rest periods, wagering portions of your beer ration. Some workers carve small amulets or tokens from limestone scraps, creating modest items to barter. These unofficial exchanges exist in grey areas, not explicitly forbidden, but watched carefully by overseers who intervene if they believe such activities reduce productivity. Some workers receive occasional messages and small packages from their families during the annual inundation when work slows. A carved wooden amulet from your child, a tiny cloth bundle of special herbs from your wife. These aren't compensation, but they're precious beyond measure. Reminders that you exist as something more than a tool for moving stone. Your compensation package includes one additional component that's never officially acknowledged: knowledge. As a pyramid builder, you learn techniques for moving immense weight with minimal technology. You develop an intimate understanding of stone types, seasonal patterns, and structural principles. This knowledge doesn't translate to power or wealth in your lifetime, but it becomes part of Egypt's collective expertise passed down through generations. During major festivals, about 5 to 7 days annually, work on the pyramid ceases. These days aren't time off so much as mandated religious observances, but they do provide brief respite from labour. You're expected to participate in ceremonies, processions and prayers, but at least you're not dragging stone blocks through the desert heat. These festival days feature slightly improved rations, more beer, and occasionally music and dance. They serve as pressure release valves, carefully timed to prevent workforce collapse. Here's what your compensation doesn't include: any meaningful possessions. Your tools belong to the project. Your clothing, a simple linen kilt, perhaps a cloak for night, is utilitarian and minimal. You have no furniture, no personal space, no currency to save. You will never accumulate enough resources to change your condition. This isn't accidental. The entire system is designed to keep you dependent, available, and working. There's a certain dark humour about it all. You're helping build one of the most extravagant tombs ever conceived, filled with treasures, food offerings, furniture, artwork, and every luxury the pharaoh might desire in the afterlife. Meanwhile, your own burial will be simple, hasty, and equipped with only the most basic necessities for the journey beyond. The man whose monument you construct will be remembered for millennia. You will be forgotten before the next season's inundation. Sometimes, during the deep night when the pain in your shoulders makes sleep impossible, you wonder if there's certain cosmic justice waiting in the afterlife. Will the pharaoh with his golden mask and elaborate tomb find himself hauling stone in the next world? Will you, with your simple linen wrapping and unmarked grave, find yourself seated among the gods? The priests would call such thoughts dangerous blasphemy. But they provide a certain comfort in the darkness. More comfort, perhaps, than the actual compensation you receive for destroying your body stone by stone. In the end, your payment consists primarily of just enough to keep you working until you can work no more, just enough food to maintain strength, just enough shelter to enable sleep, just enough medical attention to return you to productivity if injured, just enough spiritual assurance to prevent mass desertion, just enough of everything except rest, comfort, or hope for advancement. The greatest irony, perhaps, is that thousands of years later, tourists will pay significant sums to view the fruit of your labour. They'll marvel at the precision, the scale, the ambition. Guides will tell partially accurate stories about the construction techniques. Few will speak of the compensation that you received for creating one of humanity's most enduring wonders: bread, onions, and beer, the currency of used-up bodies and shortened lives. Death isn't just a risk in pyramid construction. It's a constant companion, a shadow that follows every worker from sunrise to sunset. You've become intimately familiar with the sound of it. The sudden crack of stone, the brief scream cut horrifically short, the heavy thud, then the terrible silence before the shouting begins. After a while, you don't even look anymore. You can't afford to. Looking means stopping. Stopping means punishment. The dead will be collected when the day's quota is met. The most common killer is, unsurprisingly, the stone itself. Limestone blocks weighing multiple tons, suspended by ropes and human muscle, shifting unexpectedly. Physics is merciless. When a block slips, there's no time to react, no possibility of survival if you're in its path. The lucky ones die instantly, crushed beyond recognition. The unlucky linger for hours or days, internal bleeding slowly filling their lungs, limbs shattered beyond repair, screaming for water and mercy until death finally arrives. The ropes that control these massive blocks are killers too. Under constant strain, they snap without warning, whipping through the air with enough force to decapitate. You've seen a man lose half his face to a rope end thicker than your wrist, the hemp fibres tearing through flesh as easily as a knife through papyrus. He lived, blind in one eye, his features permanently distorted, a walking reminder of what awaits the careless or the simply unfortunate. Falls claim many. As the pyramid rises, so does the risk. Narrow ramps without railings, slick with water and limestone dust, become death traps. Men lose their footing and plummet dozens of cubits to the ground below. Some fall inside the structure itself into shafts and chambers not yet sealed. Their bodies sometimes recovered, sometimes not. There are stories of sealed rooms containing the remains of workers who fell and were simply built around, becoming permanent, unnamed additions to the pharaoh's eternal home. The tools themselves maim and kill with depressing regularity. Copper chisels shattering under stress, sending sharp fragments into eyes and necks. Stone hammers slipping from sweaty grips, crushing fingers and skulls. Even the wooden levers used to move blocks claim their share of victims when they splinter under load, driving jagged shards deep into unprotected flesh. Heat kills more slowly but just as surely. The sun bears down mercilessly day after day, season after season. Men collapse from heat exhaustion, their skin burning to the touch, their minds delirious. Some recover after a night's rest. Others never wake, their brains literally cooked inside their skulls. During the hottest months, it's not uncommon to lose 2 or 3 workers daily to the sun alone. Dust infiltrates everything, especially your lungs. After a few years on the pyramid, your breathing changes, becomes shallow and painful. You cough constantly, bringing up phlegm streaked with grey or black. The oldest workers wheeze like broken bellows, their chests barely moving despite desperate efforts to draw breath. Many suffocate slowly over years, drowning on dry land, their lungs turned to stone by the very material they shape. Infection is perhaps the cruelest killer. A small cut from a tool or rope, seemingly insignificant, turns red and hot by evening. By the next day, the skin around it darkens and swells. Within 3 days, the whole limb might be affected, streaked with red lines running up toward the heart. The site physicians have seen enough of these cases to know when amputation offers the only chance of survival. Their bone saws are sharp but crude. There's no anaesthetic beyond strong beer and a leather strap to bite down on. Most die anyway, of shock or subsequent infection. Accidents cascade. One error triggers another, then another. A slipping block crushes a support which causes a ramp section to collapse, which sends a dozen men and their equipment tumbling down the structure. These chain reaction disasters are the most lethal, claiming multiple lives in moments. Afterward, the survivors simply rebuild the damaged section and continue, stepping over dried bloodstains that will eventually be covered by the next course of stone. The death rates vary by season and construction phase. During the initial site preparation, accidents are relatively few, perhaps 1 fatality per 1,000 workers monthly. As the structure rises and the work becomes more complex and precarious, the rate increases dramatically. During particularly difficult phases, such as positioning the massive granite blocks for the king's chamber, you might lose 1 worker in 100 each month. These numbers aren't recorded for posterity. The Pharaoh's chronicles mention only completion dates and dimensions, not the human cost. How your body is handled after death depends largely on your importance to the project. Skilled stonecutters, scribes or foremen receive proper preparation, basic mummification, a simple wooden coffin, perhaps a smaller Shabti figurine to serve them in the afterlife. Their names might be recorded somewhere, a brief acknowledgement of their contribution. Common labourers like you can expect less ceremony. Your body will be wrapped in linen, placed in a shallow grave in the workers' cemetery, perhaps with a crude marker that will weather away within a generation. Family notifications are equally perfunctory. If your relatives work alongside you, they'll know immediately, of course. If they're in your home village, a messenger might be dispatched, or more likely word will travel with the next group of rotating workers. Your wife might receive the news weeks after your death, along with whatever personal items were deemed not useful to the project, your eating bowl perhaps, or the amulet you wore for protection that evidently failed in its purpose. The psychology of constant danger shapes every aspect of life on the construction site. Gallows humour flourishes. Jokes about joining the pharaoh in the afterlife ahead of schedule, or bets on which section of the project will claim the next victim. It's not callousness so much as a coping mechanism. Without this dark humour, the reality would be unbearable. You laugh because the alternative is to scream. Religious practices intensify in response to the omnipresent threat. Workers create small shrines near dangerous areas, leaving offerings to protective deities. They carve protective symbols into tools, wear amulets, recite prayers before attempting particularly hazardous tasks. The official priests may focus on the pharaoh's journey to the stars, but the workers' spiritual concerns are more immediate. Survive today, worry about eternity later. Survivors develop a peculiar set of superstitions. Some refuse to work in positions where others have died. Some won't speak the names of the deceased on sight, fearing it might summon more death. Others insist on working the same position consistently, believing changing tasks invites misfortune. Logical or not, these beliefs provide illusions of control in an environment where random death is a daily occurrence. Veterans like you can sense danger before it manifests. You develop an almost supernatural awareness of subtle warnings, the slight creak of an overloaded rope, the nearly imperceptible shift of a block before it slides, the particular quality of distance that precedes a structural failure. This sixth sense isn't mystical. It's born from watching too many die and narrowly avoiding the same fate countless times. The newest workers lack this perception. They die in greater numbers. The most insidious danger isn't dramatic at all. It's the slow accumulation of damage to your body over years of brutal labour. Hernias from lifting beyond human capacity, spinal deformities from years bent beneath loads, joints that grind bone on bone after the cushioning tissue has been worn away. This gradual destruction claims more lives than sudden accidents, but more slowly, more quietly, and without the brief acknowledgement that accompanies a dramatic worksite death. Some dangers come from your fellow workers. Exhaustion and stress lead to mistakes, to fumbled handoffs of critical loads, to miscommunications with lethal consequences. Sometimes, rarely but not unheard of, deliberate sabotage occurs, a weakened rope, support nudged out of position. These acts usually target particularly brutal overseers rather than fellow labourers, but the chaos that follows rarely discriminates between the guilty and the innocent. The most senior workers sometimes speak of particularly cursed projects, pyramids or temples where the death toll was so high that the workers believed the structure itself was hungry for souls. The Step Pyramid at Saqqara, the Collapsed Pyramid at Maydam. These sites gained dark reputations, with some workers refusing assignments there despite the punishment for disobedience. Your current project hasn't reached that level of infamy, but with each fatal accident the whispers grow. Medical care for the injured exists but remains primitive. Broken limbs are set with wooden splints and linen bindings. Wounds are cleaned with beer or wine, then packed with honey and mouldy bread, treatments that sometimes prevent infection through mechanisms no one understands. Pain management consists primarily of beer with added herbs, enough to dull sensation but rarely enough to provide true relief. The screams from the physician's tent are as much a part of the site's soundscape as the hammering of stone. The statistical reality is brutal. Of every 100 men who begin work on the pyramid, perhaps 70 will live to see its completion. The remainder will be replaced as needed, their names forgotten, their contributions unmarked except in the advancing height of the structure. If the pyramid takes 20 years to complete, as many do, that's a death rate that would horrify modern safety inspectors, but is simply the accepted cost of monumental construction in ancient Egypt. What happens to the permanently disabled, those who survive accidents but can no longer work? Some are given lighter duties if their skills or knowledge justify the accommodation. A skilled stonecutter who loses a hand might become an inspector or trainer, but most are simply dismissed, sent back to their villages to survive as best they can. Some become beggars. Many starve. The pharaoh's resources are for those who can contribute to his eternal monument, not those used up in its creation. The children who work on site, carrying running water, delivering messages, assisting with simple tasks, witness this carnage from their earliest years. They grow up understanding that violent death is normal, expected, unavoidable. By the time they're old enough to haul stone themselves, they've likely seen dozens of fatal accidents. This shapes their worldview in ways that would seem pathological in another context, but are perfectly adapted to survival in the shadow of the pyramid. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect is how quickly a death becomes routine. The first time you saw a man crushed beneath a falling block, you vomited, shook for hours afterward, couldn't sleep for days. By the fifth such incident, your reaction had dulled to momentary pause, a quick prayer, then back to work. Not from lack of compassion, but from necessity. Prolonged grief is a luxury the pyramid builders cannot afford. The dead are acknowledged, then work continues. It must. Some accidents become legendary, not for their tragedy, but for their scale or peculiarity. The collapse of a major ramp during the third pharaoh's reign, killing 40 at once. The freak sandstorm that buried a team of surveyors alive. The lightning strike that killed 12 in an instant, interpreted by the priests as divine judgment for some unspecified offence. These stories are told in hushed tones during evening meals, part warning and part macabre entertainment. You learn to sleep through the sounds of suffering, the moans of the injured, the wailing of new widows. It becomes background noise, like the constant scraping of stone on stone or the creak of the wooden sledges. This ability to tune out human misery isn't something you're proud of, but it's necessary for sanity, for getting through each day without being crushed beneath the psychological weight of so much death. What keeps you working despite these dangers? Not devotion to the pharaoh, not religious fervour, not even the meagre compensation. It's simpler and more primal than that. The alternative, refusal, desertion, means execution or starvation. You continue because stopping means death with certainty, while continuing means death only as a possibility. In the brutal mathematics of survival, a chance, however small, outweighs a certainty. And so tomorrow, like today and all the days before, you'll wake before dawn, take your position, and begin again, lifting, hauling, placing stone upon stone, watching for signs of imminent danger, stepping around fresh bloodstains, nodding respectfully as bodies are carried past, all while constructing a monument to immortality through the systematic sacrifice of mortal lives, including, eventually, and almost certainly, your own. You spend your life building a mansion for the dead, yet your own grave will be nothing but sand. The irony isn't lost on you. Each stone you drag, each corner you square, each surface you polish, it's all for someone else's journey to the afterlife, never yours. You're creating the most magnificent tomb in human history, a literal stairway to heaven for a man who considers himself a god, while your own passage to eternity will be marked by nothing more than perhaps a crude pit in the workers' cemetery, if you're lucky. The religious significance of what you're building saturates every moment of your existence. The pyramid isn't just a tomb, it's a machine designed to transform a human pharaoh into an eternal star, a device to launch a soul into the cosmos. You know this, every worker knows this, the priests make sure of it, because understanding the cosmic importance of your work is the only thing that makes the suffering somewhat bearable. As you chisel stone or haul rope, you're constantly reminded that this structure aligns perfectly with the stars, that its proportions reflect sacred mathematics, that its very shape channels divine energy. The pyramid is a physical manifestation of Ma'at, the cosmic order, truth, and justice that holds the universe together. Without it, chaos would reign. Without your work, specifically your work, the heavens themselves might falter. At least that's what they tell you. You believe it mostly, you have to. What else gives meaning to your crushed fingers and bleeding shoulders? What else explains why you sacrifice your body, your time, your entire existence to build something you'll never be allowed to enter once it's complete? Faith is the mortar that holds together not just the stones, but your very sanity. But at night, when your broken body lies on hard ground and sleep won't come, darker thoughts creep in. The pharaoh will journey to the field of reeds in a golden boat, surrounded by treasures, protected by spells, his organs preserved in sacred canopic jars, his body wrapped in the finest linen. His name will be spoken for eternity. And you? Your body will be tossed into a shallow grave, unwrapped, unpreserved, unnamed. Your organs will rot inside you. No golden mask will preserve your features. No hieroglyphs will record your deeds. The afterlife isn't meant for people like you. That's the unspoken truth that haunts every stone you place. The magnificent monument you're building is the most vivid reminder of your own cosmic insignificance. You pray anyway. Every morning before work begins, every evening after tools are set down. You pray to Osiris, Lord of the afterlife. You pray to Anubis, who weighs hearts against the feather of truth. You pray to Khnum, who formed you on his potter's wheel, to Sekhmet, who might heal your broken body, to Thoth, who records all fates. You even whisper to Ammit, the devourer of souls, begging her to spare you when your time comes. Your prayers are desperate bargains. Let my heart be light when weighed, you mutter as you drag another stone. Count my labour as offerings, you plead as you chisel limestone. Remember my name though no one writes it down, you beg as you collapse into exhausted sleep. There are small rituals you perform that no priest has taught you. Little offerings, a drop of your water, a crumb of your bread placed in cracks between stones. Personal marks, nearly invisible, scratched into blocks that will be hidden forever inside the pyramid's core. Tiny, forbidden attempts to insert yourself into eternity, to smuggle your soul alongside the pharaohs into whatever lies beyond. Some workers carve tiny figures, shabti, from scrap wood or stone during rare moments of rest. These crude figurines are meant to serve you in the afterlife, to do your work for you in eternity just as you've done work for others in life. You hide them in your meagre possessions, knowing they had be taken if discovered. The pharaoh gets thousands of perfect shabti. You get one misshapen doll you carved yourself. You know workers who steal tiny amulets or scraps of linen from construction materials, things that won't be missed but might help in the afterlife. It's dangerous. Theft from a royal tomb can mean death in this life and erasure in the next. But desperation for some kind of spiritual insurance drives men to foolish risks. The priests who oversee the construction speak of the afterlife constantly, but never address what happens to you. In their cosmic drama, you're merely a prop, not a character with your own eternity to consider. When you directly ask what becomes of pyramid builders after death, their answers are vague platitudes. The gods see all service, or your contribution to Ma'at will be remembered. Nothing specific, nothing guaranteed. You've seen the graves of your fellow workers who didn't survive construction. Simple pits dug into the desert, bodies wrapped in rough cloth if wrapped at all. Sometimes a pottery jar with a little food. Occasionally a simple tool they used in life. No texts, no spells, no navigational guides for the dangerous journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. They're expected to figure it out alone, these men who built the very roadmap to heaven for someone else. There's a bitter joke among workers. We know the way to the afterlife better than anyone. We built the damn road. It's not really funny, but you laugh anyway. What else can you do? You think about this cosmic unfairness as you shape stones that will form the walls of the pharaoh's burial chamber. Inside, every surface will be covered with spells from the pyramid texts. Explicit, detailed instructions for navigating every challenge of the afterlife. The pharaoh gets a map, a guide, a set of passwords for each gate. You'll get nothing but whatever prayers you can remember in your final moments. Some older workers have memorized fragments of the sacred texts overheard during the construction of the previous tombs. They whisper these stolen spells to each other at night. When you reach the lake of fire, say this, or when the serpent Apophis approaches, recite these words. It's forbidden knowledge, not meant for common men, but you listen, you memorize, you rehearse in silent movements of your lips as you work. Just in case these fragments might help you navigate eternity when your time comes. You wonder if the gods can tell the difference between a pharaoh's soul and yours. Will Anubis know you're not supposed to have access to the field of reeds just because no one preserved your heart in a canopic jar? Will the celestial ferryman turn you away because you have no golden funerary mask? These questions haunt you as much as the pain in your back or the hunger in your belly. The cruel paradox of your existence becomes clearest when you help install the massive granite blocks that will seal the pharaoh's chamber. You know every detail of this sacred space, its proportions, its orientation, its symbolic meaning. You've helped create the most perfect environment for a successful afterlife ever devised by human hands. And you will never ever see it completed. Once the pharaoh's mummy enters, the chamber will be sealed forever. Your knowledge of the perfect tomb becomes useless for your own eternity. Sometimes you dream of the inside of the finished pyramid, of its dark, silent chambers waiting for millennia. In these dreams, you are not outside building, but inside dwelling. You're the one lying in the great sarcophagus, your body preserved, your journey to the stars assured. You wake from these dreams more tired than before you slept. There are whispered stories among the workers about secret chambers within the pyramids, rooms not in the official plans, spaces where certain privileged workers were secretly buried alongside their divine master. You don't know if these tales are true or just comforting fantasies, but on some desperate days, you find yourself examining the structure, wondering where a hidden chamber might be located, how it might be constructed without the architects noticing. It's a futile thought exercise. You'll never have the opportunity or materials to create such a space, but the idea offers a momentary escape. The pharaoh's priests teach that the pyramid is a resurrection machine. its very shape a solidified ray of sunlight down which the king will climb to join Ra in his solar boat. As you help build this machine, you wonder if some residual magic might cling to you. You've touched the sacred stones, aligned them to celestial measurements, participated in creating this cosmic device. Surely some of its power might transfer to the men who built it, but deep down you know better. Death comes for many of your fellow workers. You've seen hundreds die over the years, crushed by stones, fallen from heights, succumbed to disease or exhaustion. Their bodies are removed efficiently, buried quickly, and replaced by new workers within days. There are no elaborate ceremonies, no mummification, no provision of grave goods beyond the most basic. The contrast between how the pharaoh's future death is being prepared for and how your comrades' actual deaths are handled could not be more stark. Yet despite everything, the inequality, the injustice, the cosmic unfairness, you still feel something profound when you look at the emerging pyramid. Pride, yes, but something more, a connection to something eternal. You may not get a proper tomb yourself, but you've helped create something that will outlast nations, something future people will marvel at for thousands of years. The pharaoh may claim it as his exclusive doorway to eternity, but you know your sweat, blood, and skill are embedded in every cubit. In your most honest moments, you admit to yourself that part of your soul already dwells within these stones. Your hands have shaped them, your eyes have measured them, your back has moved them. The pyramid isn't just the pharaoh's eternal home, it's yours too, in some small way that even the priests don't fully understand. And so you continue to build, day after day, stone upon stone, creating a pathway to the stars that you'll never be permitted to walk, constructing an eternity you'll never be invited to share. Yet with each block you place, each measurement you make perfect, you whisper the same quiet prayer. Remember me too. Whoever or whatever waits beyond death, remember I was here. Remember I built this. Remember my hands, my pain, my life. The pyramid rises. The pharaoh will die and journey to the stars. You will die and journey to obscurity. But the stones you shaped will remain, standing between earth and sky, holding within them the silent, eternal echo of the men who built them. And perhaps, in the end, that's its own kind of immortality. You'll never know this, but the work of your hands will outlast empires. The massive stone monument you helped build day after backbreaking day will still be standing 5,000 years from now, when civilizations you can't even imagine have risen and fallen like the Nile's annual flood. Nations will be born, thrive, and crumble to dust while these angled walls of limestone continue to point toward the same stars they were aligned with during your short, painful life. Long after your unmarked grave has been forgotten, travellers will journey thousands of miles just to stand in the shadow of what you've built. They'll come from lands you've never heard of, speak languages that don't yet exist, and stare upward in awe at the precision of your work. They'll take pictures with devices you couldn't comprehend, write books analysing how you accomplished this feat, and debate endlessly about techniques you consider ordinary daily labour. But here's the cruel joke of history. They won't know your name, not yours, not your father's, not any of the 20,000 men who bled and died to stack these stones toward heaven. The monument you're creating won't be remembered as a testament to the ingenuity and suffering of its builders. It will be known only by the name of the man who will be buried inside it, the man who ordered its construction but never lifted a stone, never felt the rope burn across his shoulders, never tasted the grit of limestone dust coating his tongue. The pharaoh's name will be carved into history as permanently as it's etched into the stone of his tomb. Your name will be as ephemeral as your shadow on the sand. You are creating immortality, but not your own. 5 millennia from now, people will stand where you now haul stone and will ask the wrong questions. They'll wonder how such a massive structure could be built without modern machines. They'll marvel at the mathematical precision of the angles and alignment. They'll debate whether alien visitors or mystical powers must have been involved, because surely normal humans couldn't achieve something so monumental. Few will speak of the core of skilled workers, the generational knowledge, the innovative solutions, the countless individual decisions that make this structure possible. So desperate will future people be to explain away the achievement of ordinary human labour that they'll invent fantastic theories rather than accept the simple truth you live every day, that enough human bodies, enough human pain, enough human ingenuity, applied relentlessly over decades, can move mountains of stone and reshape the very landscape itself. If they could see you now, on your calloused hands, your scarred back, your sun-baked skin, perhaps they would understand. If they could witness the thousands of workers coordinating their efforts with surprising precision, they might realise no supernatural explanation is necessary. But they won't see that. They'll see only the finished product, sterile and perfect, with all evidence of its human creation deliberately hidden. The irony doesn't end there. While you work yourself to death creating this tomb, knowing you'll be denied entry to its sacred spaces, future visitors will walk freely through chambers meant to be sealed for eternity. Grave robbers will violate the pharaoh's rest within a few generations, stealing the treasures meant to accompany him to the afterlife. And thousands of years later, tourists will file through the sacred passageways, taking souvenirs, scratching their names into ancient walls, treating as a curiosity what you build as a cosmic gateway. You know every nook of this structure intimately. Your hands have touched stones that no human hand was ever supposed to touch again once the sealing was complete. The pyramid was designed to be perfect, pristine, and permanently closed, a sealed vessel launching a divine soul to the stars. Instead, it will become a tourist attraction, an archaeological curiosity, its contents plundered, its purpose forgotten, its power diminished. The stones you cut with such precision will remain, but the meaning encoded in their arrangement will be lost. Future visitors will admire the engineering while missing the theology. They'll see a tomb but not understand it was built as a resurrection machine. They'll measure its dimensions without grasping that every proportion was dictated by sacred mathematics. The technical achievement will endure while its spiritual purpose fades. Archaeologists of the distant future will find your skeleton eventually, buried in the simple workers' cemetery near the pyramid. They'll examine your bones with curious detachment, noting the telltale signs of your profession. Vertebrae compressed from carrying heavy loads, shoulders and hips deformed from hauling stone, hands permanently bent into the shapes of the tools you wielded. Your remains will become a specimen, evidence in scholarly debates about how the pyramids were built. They'll reconstruct your diet from the wear on your teeth, estimate your age from your bone density, even determine where you grew up from chemical traces in your enamel. What they won't recover is your name, your hopes, your prayers, the songs you sang to keep rhythm while working, the jokes you told to make the labour bearable, the small moments of pride when a stone fit perfectly into place. These lived experiences, the actual substance of your existence, will vanish completely. Your skeleton will become a data point, your life reduced to what can be measured in your bones. The truth about how these monuments were built will be debated endlessly. Some future scholars will claim you were a slave forced to work under the cruel whip of overseers. Others will correctly identify you as a skilled worker, part of a permanent labour force that built pyramids across generations. They'll find remnants of your village, analyse the remains of your meals, and conclude that you were fed well enough to remain productive. What they won't fully capture is the complex reality that you were technically free but practically bound, adequately fed but systematically exploited, valued for your whole skill but burnable as a person. The organised system that makes pyramid building possible will eventually collapse. Future Egyptians will lose the knowledge your community has accumulated, how to cut granite with copper tools, how to move 50-ton stones with ropes and rollers, how to create perfect right angles using simple measurement tools. They'll look at older pyramids like the one you're building and invent myths about how they were constructed, because the actual methods will be forgotten even in the culture that pioneered them. If you could somehow see into the future, you'd be both proud and perplexed. Proud that your work endures when so much else has vanished. Entire civilizations risen and fallen while these angled stones still reach for the sky. Perplexed that future people will develop technologies you can't imagine, flying machines, devices that let them speak across vast distances, weapons that can level cities, yet they still won't be able to replicate exactly what you're building with rudimentary tools and raw human effort. Your work will become symbolic in ways you couldn't predict. The pyramid shape will be borrowed by civilizations across time and geography. It will appear on the back of strange foreign money. Tiny glass versions will sit on desks of powerful people who believe the shape itself channels mystical energy. False claims will be made about its dimensions, encoding mathematical constants or predicting future events. The simple truth that it was a tomb designed to launch a king's soul to eternity will be obscured under layers of mysticism and pseudoscience. If you could speak to the future tourists who will stand where you now toil, what would you tell them? Perhaps you'd explain that no aliens or supernatural powers were needed, just thousands of humans working in coordinated effort. Perhaps you'd point out the quarries where the stones were cut, the ramps where they were dragged, the copper tools that somehow shaped granite through patient persistence. Or perhaps you'd simply ask them to remember that every stone they see passed through human hands, hands that bled and blistered and eventually turned to dust. You'd tell them about the skilled artisans who could square a block so perfectly that you can't fit a copper needle between joined stones. You'd explain how ropes were woven from plant fibres, how wooden sledges were crafted to move massive burdens, how water was used to move earth for massive ramps. You'd describe the complex social organisation required, the planning, the logistics of feeding thousands of workers, the coordination of different specialised teams. You'd want them to know this wasn't magic or mystery, but the product of human innovation and sacrifice. Most of all, you'd want future people to understand that the pyramid was built by people with names, with families, with hopes and fears and jokes and songs, not by faceless masses, not by slaves driven mindlessly forward, but by communities of skilled workers who passed knowledge from father to son, who took pride in their craft even as it broke their bodies, who believed in the sacred purpose of their labour even as they questioned their place in the cosmic order. You'd want them to know about the worker who developed a better way to lever stones into place, the team leader who created a new system for coordinating the pull on massive blocks, the rope maker whose stronger cables saved dozens of lives. You'd want them to hear about the songs that synchronized group efforts, the markings that guided precise placement, the organizational systems that turned chaos into order. You'd want them to know that the pharaoh may have commanded the pyramid's construction, but it was created through the genius of common men. Maybe you'd show them your hands, the permanent calluses, the fingers that no longer straighten completely, the palms embedded with stone dust that no amount of washing will remove. Maybe you'd show them your shoulders, broadened and deformed from years of hauling. Maybe you'd let them feel the weight of the copper chisel you use for hours each day. Let them try to shape stone with it. Watch as they give up after a few minutes of what you do from sunrise to sunset. You might walk them around the base of the pyramid over a half-mile in circumference and have them contemplate that every cubic foot of this colossal structure was quarried, transported, lifted, and placed by human muscle. You might point out that the stones at the base weigh as much as 15 men, while those near the top still weigh more than you do. You might ask them to imagine moving even one of these blocks without their machines, then multiply that effort by the 2. 3 million blocks that form the completed monument. The tourists of the future will take their pictures, buy their souvenirs, and return to their comfortable lives impressed but ultimately unchanged by their brief encounter with your life's work. Few will truly contemplate the human cost of creating such perfection. Few will think of you, the individual lives consumed by this massive project, the bodies broken to build something supposedly everlasting. The pyramid you're helping to build will become one of the defining human achievements, a physical embodiment of what our species can accomplish through collective effort. Long after the civilization that produced it has faded, long after the language spoken by its builders has been forgotten, long after the gods it was meant to honour have lost their worshippers, the pyramid will remain. It will outlast religions, nations, and entire worldviews. It will witness the rise and fall of empires. It will stand as testament to human capability and human cost. And perhaps in some small way, that's what matters most. Not that your name is remembered, but that the work endures. Not that future generations know who you were individually, but that they cannot help but confront the evidence of what humans could achieve through unified purpose even with the simplest of tools. The pharaoh sought immortality through his monument, but ironically, it's the nameless builders whose collective achievement truly became immortal. 5,000 years from now, when the tourists stand in the shadow of your creation, perhaps a few will look at the massive stones and think not of the king buried within, but of the hands that placed each block. Perhaps they'll feel a connection across millennia to the anonymous craftspeople whose precise, patient work created this wonder. Perhaps they'll recognize that the true marvel isn't the pyramid itself, but the human capacity for creation that it represents. And in that moment of recognition, though your name is lost, though your individual story has vanished from memory, something of you endures. Not immortality as the pharaoh envisioned it, but a different kind of remembrance. The authentic legacy of the builders whose sweat and blood and ingenuity made the impossible possible, one stone at a time. You were a pyramid builder, not a warrior with songs sung about his battles, not a priest with sacred knowledge, not a scribe whose words might last through the ages. Just a builder, one of thousands who spent their lives stacking stone upon stone, creating a mountain where none had existed before. No crown, no special title, just calloused hands and a permanently curved spine to show for decades of labour. Your body was the engine that powered Egypt's immortality machine. Your mind solved the practical problems of moving objects too heavy for any person to lift alone. Your eyes judged alignments that would remain precise for millennia. Your strength depleted day by day so that a single man's journey to the afterlife would be assured. The pharaoh will sleep in perfection, surrounded by treasures, his name carved into history. You'll sleep in the sand, surrounded by others like you, your name whispered a few times after your death and then never spoken again. But the stones know. They remember the hands that shaped them, the backs that moved them, the precise adjustments that settled them into place. In the mathematics of cosmic justice, perhaps it balances somehow. The pharaoh gets a perfect tomb but must face the judgment of the gods for how he ruled. You get a simple grave but carry the quiet pride of having created something beyond what any individual should be able to accomplish. He claims eternity through gold and spells and elaborate rituals. You achieve it through the silent endurance of the stones you've placed. We stand now in a time unimaginably distant from your own, looking back across 5,000 years of human history, and still we see you. Not clearly, not completely, but we see the evidence of your existence in every perfectly fitted stone, in every precisely measured angle, in the organizational genius required to coordinate such a massive project with such limited technology. We know you were there, even if we don't know your name. And in our own way, we're still building pyramids, not with limestone blocks or on dusty plateaus, but we're still dedicating our limited lifespans to projects that may outlast us, still breaking our bodies to create something more permanent than ourselves, still accepting that our individual names might be forgotten while our collective work endures. Perhaps that's the hidden truth buried deeper than any pharaoh's chamber, that immortality never comes to the individual, not really. It comes to what we create together, what we build by combining our limited lives into something larger, something that speaks not of a single ruler, but of what humans can accomplish when united by common purpose and vision. You didn't choose to be a pyramid builder. It was chosen for you by birth, by circumstance, by the rigid social structure of ancient Egypt. You simply did what was expected day after day, stone after stone. But in doing so, you became part of something that transcends individual identity or ambition. You became one note in a symphony of human achievement that still echoes across millennia. So sleep now, builder of wonders. Your body has given all it can give. Your eyes have measured all they can measure. Your hands have shaped all they can shape. The pyramid stands and will stand when empires yet unborn have crumbled to dust. The king claims it as his eternal home, but it belongs as much to you, to all of you whose bodies and minds made it possible. In our next journey, we'll explore another forgotten life from history's shadows, the medieval midwife, whose hands brought life into the world but who faced suspicion, danger and persecution for her essential knowledge. But for now, let the rhythm of ancient stonework and the whisper of desert winds carry you gently into sleep, just as they once carried a pharaoh's soul toward the unchanging stars.